Israelites in Colossus. You had Israelites in Ephesus. You had Israelites in Galatia. You had Israelites in Corinth. You had Israelites in Philippi. You had Israelites in Rome. Okay, so that's why Paul made his journeys. He was speaking to the Israelites up north of Israel, Antioch, and so forth. So that's how you put the pieces of the puzzle together.
That's right.
So then you realize, wait a minute, the Moors are black, but they have to be Israelites. The people of the Byzantine Empire had to be Israelites. If you come down to this museum.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 7. And the Lord power formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So basically is that you know that the Lord created man of the dust of the ground. You know, I mean, the actual dust on the top, you can't grow anything in that. You have to actually dig into the earth and actually get that rich, deep soil.
As they call it, black soil,
right?
It's really dark brown.
Right, which is the most fertile soil.
Yeah, isn't there a scripture that says, "For dust thou art,
dust
thou shalt return"?
Yep.
You know, for you so-called atheists out there, explain why when you die, when the body dies, it turns into what? It turns back into dust. It goes back to the earth where it originally came from.
This is the book of 1 Maccabees 3 and 48. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
Yeah, and a good example of that is here in this museum with the different frescoes and the different...
Renaissance art.
Yeah, Renaissance art, which, again, Apostle Elder explained to you what the word Renaissance means, rebirth, because you will find out that at one time the so-called white man, before he had his Renaissance, his rebirth, he was a slave. He was a slave as a nation. They were slaves underneath us Israelites. At that time, we were calling ourselves by different names. One of those names was a Moor, you know, a so-called Arab during the so-called Byzantine Empire. The so-called white man during that time, he was a slave, man, or they were slaves. All right, they were living in the holes of the earth. They were living in caves. Okay, they were pretty destitute. As a matter of fact, we can go to this book of Job. The 30th chapter. And what happened was when they came back into power during the 1400s, the latter part of the 1300s, when they came back into power, they had their rebirth or their renaissance. And then they started putting up pictures of great men that are supposed to be so-called black men, you know, Israelites. They started putting themselves up as those pictures, as those great men. A good example is the one that the world calls Jesus Christ. Magically, after the latter part of the 1300s and the 1400s, magically, Jesus, the one the world calls Jesus Christ, became a so-called white man. But prior before that, pretty much the people of the world knew that the one the world calls Jesus Christ, that he was truly a so-called black man. Okay, and that he was an Israelite. They knew the history, but when the so-called white man came into power, they pretty much changed all that. Okay, hence you have the term rebirth. And pretty much what's in here is so-called white supremacy. This is just another form of so-called white supremacy.
Keep the lie going.
Keep the lie going. All right? And Apostle Elder mentioned about the wall of benefactors. They were privy to keeping the lie going.
If you remember some of the names.
Yeah,
pretty famous
Rosie,
names.
Bloomberg. Bloomberg was one of those individuals on the list. All right?
The Rockefellers, I believe.
The Rockefellers. These are top banking families. They help donate to this museum and have the artifacts on display. Have you believing that King David was a so-called white man and James the Greater was a so-called white man, and prominent people, especially in the Bible, were all so-called white people. These benefactors help donate to that to push the lie, to keep it going, which is a form of so-called white supremacy. Okay?
That's something real quick. This is the book of 2 Maccabees 15 and 10. And when he had stirred up their minds, he gave them their charge, showing them therewithal the falsehood of the heathen.
Yeah, the falsehood of the heathen. Again, a good example is all these images that are really supposed to be so-called black people. Okay? But magically, they became so-called white people with the nose, the real images, the nose is chipped. That's an image of falsehood. Go ahead.
This is Job chapter 30 verse 1. But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set the dogs of my flock.
Yeah, the people that Job is speaking about is the so-called white man, which are known as the Edomites. Okay, that's their true biblical nationality. And it's funny how we went up in this museum, we didn't really see any section on Edom.
I'm going to try something. Flip over here. Maybe we can get better light.
There was no section on the nation of Edom. I wonder why that is.
Better. A lot better.
Yeah.
A lot better. And well, you get a better picture.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't like it, we can move back.
Yeah, I'm starting.
Okay, come back over here.
Yeah.
Come back over here.
A little too much light.
Okay, all right. You know what I'm gonna do?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, that's a little better. A little better. Yeah, right. All right, man.
If you want to move over a little bit more, I'll work it. Move where it's comfortable.
Okay.
Move over. I'm just trying to steal some of this light.
Yeah, I got you.
All right, this is back in Job 30 verse 2. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, and whom old age was perished? For one and
Yeah, basically, our forefather Job, what color was Job according to the Bible? Let's bring that out. And like I said, in this museum, it's funny how they didn't have no section on Edom. You know, no section in the museum where you see the big block letters of E-D-O-M.
Oh, you never have that.
I wonder why.
Never have that. They don't want to know nothing about no. We don't want to know nothing about no Edomites, man.
That's right. That's right.
You want to know very little about the Edomites or Esau. We don't want to hear that word. This is Esau talking. We don't want to hear why. I wonder why.
I wonder why. As if the Edomites never existed as a people. But right smack dab in the Bible, we have the history of the Edomites. Certain vile acts that they did. We have the history of Esau, Jacob's brother. All right, Jacob and Esau were brothers, right in the Bible. How come in this museum there's no section of Jacob and Esau?
it's a museum.
It's a museum, right? You mean to tell me that all these benefactors that have all these exorbitant amounts of money have never heard of Jacob and Esau?
There's a reason why, ladies and gentlemen. Because they know that they're the Edomites.
That's right.
Yeah, 4 different lives.
And these are the world shakers. These individuals have the ability, like this, like you go across the street to get a sandwich at your convenience store. They have the ability to travel the world.
Wait a minute, wouldn't you be curious? Because that's all they do. They like to study, right?
Right.
Didn't it say? Give me that. Was that Ezekiel 28?
And they got the ability.
Esau checks out every goddamn thing, right? They're wiser than Daniel, right?
Yeah.
But they're not. When it came across Esau and Jacob.
Yep.
I don't know.
We can't put that on the screen.
No, I don't. Doesn't sound interesting to me.
Yeah. And we always tell you about the dictionary that the elder apostle had years ago. They had the map of Israel, and they had the excavation sites that the Rothschilds did, and they turned that whole land into Swiss cheese. There were so many excavation sites on that map that Israel looked like a piece of Swiss cheese, holes everywhere. And that's what the word excavate means. Ex means out and cavate means hole, like cavity. Okay, so an excavation is digging into the earth to go and get those artifacts. Now that's pretty much what they did here. But where's the section on Jacob and Esau? What happened to Esau? What happened to Edom? You didn't find any artifacts of Esau or Edom? There's a reason why.
They know they have an abundant amount of information on Esau and Jacob. But the ones that are privy to this information are the super elite. I'm not talking about Bill Clinton and Hillary. I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm not talking about any of those characters. I'm talking about the super elite that you hardly ever hear about. They know who Esau is. Yep.
That's it. What do you got there?
This is Ezekiel 28 and 3. Behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee.
Yeah, that's talking about these top ranking elite that own these museums. like the Rothschild family, they pretty much own this museum. If Rothschild wanted to come down here and camp in one of these rooms in here, kick everybody out, guess what? He could do that. Because the Rothschilds, not only do they own this museum, they own the world. My question is this: why isn't there a section on Esau or Edom? Go ahead.
All right. Now this is back in Job chapter 30, verse 30. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burnt with heat.
So we wanted to know the color of Job. So right there, we know that Job was a so-called black man, what you would call a so-called black man today, which in reality he was a Hebrew Israelite. Job, our forefather Job. He came out of the line of the Israelites. Okay, go ahead.
All right, back in Job 30, verse 3. For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste.
Now the group of people that Job is speaking about, Job being the so-called black man, is what you know today as a so-called white man, who's known as Esau, Edom. Read that again. Read that scripture again.
Right. For want and famine they were solitary.
For want and famine they were solitary, meaning they were destitute people. Okay, go ahead.
Fleeing into the wilderness.
Fleeing into the wilderness. They dwelt in the wilderness. They dwelt in areas like Petra, which is one of the top cities in the land of Edom. Petra, which the word Petra means rock. There's even an artifact of Petra. You could see like.
All you got to do is look up, go to Google. It's worth of Google. Go to Google and type in Petra,
which was a chief city or city.
Thank you.
Which was a chief city in the land of Edom. Okay, Petra. And then later they dwelt in what is known as the Caucasus Mountains of southern Russia, Georgia, Russia. Okay,
well, what you have to understand is too, is that you had some Edomites stayed down in Petra, because they tell you that the Nabateans, they built that. That's bullshit. The Nabateans are so-called Arab. That's what they'll tell you when you look up the word Petra, and it'll show you this red clay-like or clay look, a Roman-style building, if you will, that's chiseled into the mountains. And they say, well, the Nabateans did that. Okay, it was an Esau that did that, man.
Yeah.
Because Esau stayed down in Mount Seir, which is Petra today. And the other half, I'll say half and half, right? Could be 60-40. We don't know.
Right.
The other half went northbound up into parts of Europe or Greece. They went up into parts of the mountain, which is in the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. With that range of mountains in between that is known as the Caucasus Mountains. That's why they refer to Esau, white people, so-called white people, as Caucasians. The word Caucasian doesn't mean white; it means cave dweller. That's all it means, you know.
And those were destitute areas. All right, and to back up Elder Apostle Ta'af, indeed, when they that split half and half, if you will, you had certain Edomites that started calling themselves Greeks, then later called themselves Romans.
That's why when the Herodian dynasty was set up, the Roman Caesars referred to them as Edomites.
Right.
All right, because they knew that there were such a people called Edomites.
That's right.
And they were the ones that set them up to be the leaders over Israel that was in that province of Rome, which is Jerusalem today. All right.
Yeah,
they were. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because Antipater, he had gained favor from the Romans, and then Herod, his son, also gained favor from the Caesars, and they actually, by the help that he gave them, they actually appointed him king over the Jews. You know. So there's history on the Edomites dealing with the Romans and helping them. That's why Herod was known as one of the greatest builders out there. You know, he built up a lot of those architectures for the Roman Caesars.
And to back up Apostle Randolph, if you see the style of the building that Herod, the way he built, it mimics what is in Petra. The same style of, as you see the picture now, the same style of building that you see in Petra, chiseled in the rock, was the same style of building that the Romans built.
Because he came out of Petra.
Exactly.
He came out of Mount Seir, formerly known as Mount Seir.
Which proves that they're Edomites. Okay, that's your proof. And even today, if we go to places like, well, even here, we're standing in front of the Met, and I'm looking at the front of the Met, it looks like the same Romanesque type of building that you would see during the Roman times, and even going back to Petra. We're standing right in front of it right now. We're looking at it. Okay? So this all proves that those are the Edomites. Okay?
That's proof, but then there's other proof too.
And there's other proof.
Yeah.
That's just a scintilla,
Yeah.
a scintilla of proof. All right. We could go even deeper with it. All right. But if you want proof, you can start with that.
That's right.
All right.
Back in Job chapter 30, verse 3. For one in famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste.
So you got an example. You got Petra. You got the Caucasus Mountains. These are not desert. What do you call it? What do you call that? What's the word I'm looking for? Like a tourist retreats. All right. Those were not.